Hey folks, welcome. Glad to have everyone. I know we've got a healthy group today. This is Corey with Rocket PD. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to our friends at NESDEC for helping us promote this. I know there are a lot of folks out there right now who probably received some information about the deadlines shifting for the DOJ document compliance, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that we've been seeing, and we're going to ask our friend Leo Brehm from Dighton-Rehoboth, who is here today, to talk a little bit about what his district is doing. Leo, it's great to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you, Corey. Really excited to be here. Apologize in advance if there's any background noise. I happen to be traveling. But hopefully these noise canceling headphones are working well. But looking forward to the conversation. I'm glad to share what we're doing and why I think it's the right time as well.
Great, Leo. Thank you. I'm going to put you on mute for a second. And just so you guys know, Leo made a special exception in his schedule. He's in Salt Lake City on his way to Cupertino, stopped in the airport just for this session. So I hope you'll stick around and hear what he has to say. Let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so we've already met Leo. Again, I'm Corey, CEO of Rocket PD. Some of you have probably sat on some of the webinars that we've put together in the past. As you know, we've kind of built this community of educators who are talking to us about the challenges that they're facing in their districts. We've had our ear to the ground and we're constantly listening and trying to understand where we can provide some resource help. One of the issues that we heard a lot about this year was DOJ's and document accessibility rule that came into play. And obviously, there's been some changes to that, but also just making documents accessible for students and for staff. If you know my story, as someone with cerebral palsy, I am someone who has lived sort of in this world for a long time. There were times in my life where I had to be taken out of class in order to have special resources given to me so that I could learn how to do things in a different way. And I was very grateful for the attention that I received and for the effort that the school districts made on my behalf to make resources accessible. And so I feel deeply about this topic, and I'm happy to be able to bring this conversation to you with Leo's help today. So thank you again. Let's talk a little bit about, again, these rules, sort of what changed and what didn't. If you've been on one of our previous webinars, we were talking a couple months ago about the fact that this deadline was coming up in April. Well, just before that deadline was about to happen, DOJ came out and revised it and said, we're going to give everybody a year longer, which I think was a sigh of relief for a lot of folks. The people that we were talking to were saying, hey, we got to get this done, but we kind of feel like deer in headlights because we didn't really know enough about this. We don't have it budgeted for this year. We need to figure out a plan and we need some more time. So the government, in a sense, heard that and has given us a little more time. That doesn't necessarily mean that the problem is going away, but I do think it gives us a little bit more runway to really think about how this fits into our system. You can see on the screen those deadlines have been extended by almost exactly 1 year from today. If you are a district of, and I'll show this in just a second, if you are a district that serves a population of 50,000 or more, you have until April 26, 2027 now to get this fully in place before those compliance deadlines hit. If you are a community that's serving 50,000 and under, you have until 2028 to get everything fully in place. What we wrote at the bottom here, start now to provide access and develop a system that you can scale later. I think that's probably the way to think about this. Again, the deadlines have shifted, Leo, but not the requirements. And of course, not the sort of moral responsibility I think that a lot of districts have to make documents accessible for all students. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Corey, like many, of the unfunded mandates that were handed down to us at school districts, it was on our radar, but again, it was one of those other many things to keep on our radar. And we're going to do it at the last minute or kind of do it in process. But as I was peeling back the layers on what the process entailed, I saw a lot of value in going through the process. And I'm not sure if this is the time to talk about it, but I saw a lot of value to the district as far as getting the web page up to date, removing old data. And then more importantly, and I know we'll talk about it a little later, is around preparing for AI and the use of these documents with AI, right? Because what we have is old and not clean. And there's people talk about ghosts in AI, and those ghosts are caused by bad data going in.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We kind of hit on that on our conversation before you all jumped on earlier. But if you've ever used AI and uploaded documents to it, if those documents are not accessible, it might not tell you that it didn't include those documents in its analysis. You might be going through the analysis, seeing that some context is missing, and start to wonder, did it read that document? And then you kind of have to ask it, hey, were you able to access this? And it will say, oh, no, I wasn't, so I didn't use it. But if you don't think about that ahead of time, you could find yourself in some hot water. So yeah, great point, Leo, and we will talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so I just wanted to review for folks what the law, or I should say the rule, requires. Websites, again, PDFs, which is largely what we're talking about today, because those are documents that hang off of your website. Those are documents that people are uploading, you know, every day, sometimes every hour, and they aren't always accounted for in that initial analysis. You might have someone who's taking care of your website, for example, or an overlay and think you're covered, but those documents that hang off are also included. And so most districts are realizing that they need a system to take care of that ever-growing backlog of those PDF documents. Again, that's that WCAG 2.1 level 2A standard, which you can type into Google or ChatGPT or wherever you do your web search and read a little bit more about that standard. We're going to talk about a solution that gets you there and it does it pretty quickly and efficiently. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a second. This applies to some pretty interesting documents, some pretty important documents in your universe, right? It applies to those board materials, those policies, a lot of forms that people need to fill out all across your universe, the SPED documents, and of course, public communications. I'm sure we've got some communications folks on the call today who are thinking about this and those front-facing documents for families, staff, and students. So it's ongoing. It's not a one-time project. Hopefully, we can shed some light on how you can get your arms around that today. Okay, so what does this really mean in terms of the changes? Leo, you and I talked about this earlier. Good thing is we can take a breath. We don't need to rush. We don't need to be that deer in headlights that I think some of us were just a few short weeks ago. But it does mean that we need a plan. And I think this would be a great opportunity for us to get together and talk about what does a plan look like for accessibility in our district and what tools are available to us, whether it's automation first tools like you're going to see today, whether it's the staff that we have who are doing that human remediation or some combination of those two things. Those backlogs are growing. So again, that problem hasn't necessarily paused or gone away. But I think, Leo, we can agree accessibility at the end of the day is the goal for most districts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's anything new for schools either. We've all had, the need for certain students or certain community members to have access to documents, whether curriculum related or, community facing related documents. And I think that again, I keep kind of pointing to that AI piece, but that AI piece, machine learning, because whether it was called machine readable at the time, was one of those pieces that was important for data that we were presenting. So I think what this does do, it puts us kind of on notice and gives us a year. What we are doing internally at DR is we are reviewing our website. The website isn't, terribly old, but it's not super current either. And it is time for review. So, and in that review process, the use of this tool will just be part of that. That ability to take a document, we think that the data looks fine, and we can put it in there and have it updated accordingly and come out the other end. Using humans to do this process, I know you bring it up. that's not viable. One of my former hats was CTO of Newton Public Schools, and we did a whole website refresh. And if you talk to the person who headed that up, that was a full-time person for a year, essentially reviewing the pages and documents that were posted. So, and that wasn't even for accessibility. So, if you added accessibility or something like that, it's a lot. I mean, not everybody's that size, but it's just a lot of work that human error comes into play. So, and the first thing anybody's going to say is, why aren't you using AI to do this? So, I think having AI that's trained to do this effectively is the big part of this. And so, having that plan on, breaking down each section and how it works, and then ultimately, how do you incorporate that into your production of your curriculum content as well, so that as curriculum content is going to be ingested and used electronically in different ways, having that be accessible as well in that same fashion, for the people who need it just in time, and for how we might use it with other technologies that are AI driven or machine driven.
Really good points, Leo. We talked a little bit about you're going to have this human in the loop. We're always going to have that, but I think it's about giving our staff tools that they can use and deploy as needed. What we're going to show you in just a bit really is an option that you can think of almost like a printer that you would have in your office, and you use it when you need it to get you the level of accessibility at the standard required. And I think that is going to be a really cool thing for a lot of people to be able to do that in a matter of minutes versus a matter of hours, weeks, or in some cases months. And the risk level that reduces in terms of litigation or just inaccessibility for students, the ability for students to fall behind if they're not getting timely access to documentation, it just brings that temperature down significantly. So
It
we'll talk.
prepares you for a number of things, Corey, too. I mean, we're thinking about, when you're talking to websites now, right? There's that piece now where the idea of accessibility is changing. We think website, but in the future, it's really going to be you're talking to a device, and that device needs to get that source of truth from somewhere, right? That true information that's coming from the information that you're storing. And think of your website as that storage point, right, at this point in time. So things like language translation too. If that PDF isn't formatted correctly and tagged correctly, even the intent of that language translation could be thrown off, right? So, and we don't want to be messing around with some of that, and saying the wrong messaging to people in different languages either.
That's a really, really great point. Okay, so the reality for most districts, and Leo kind of touched on this, right? If your website is that storage point, what's going on there? What do you got, right? You've probably got thousands of PDFs that have been created over time. Depending on the size of your district, you have a number that are being added probably every day, if not every hour. And so it's difficult to know exactly how much you have that needs to be worked out. And again, like, don't feel like a deer in headlights. The whole backlog does not need to be taken care of right away. That's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is spending the time to create a plan and apply resources. So you take care of those high priority documents first. You make sure people have what they need, and then you continue to clean. And that might look like just deleting some stuff, right? Like, we don't necessarily need to clean everything right away. In some cases, we might just need to take some stuff down. Have you found that, Leo?
Yeah, I have. It is time to, again, it's kind of forces us into that evaluation of, oh, this is old, or this doesn't apply anymore. Well, this really needs to be updated, right? Um, in my own town, I don't want to diss my own town where I live, but, went looking for the program of studies this year. And last year's was up, right? And I know there was changes, right? And so then you have to go through the process of where it was stored, and it was sent out through Parent Square, not put on the website. And so I think, forcing your your internal processes to come up with a system and a structure to do that. And in that process, you can look at these documents at the same time. So I think there's something to that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think again, just to re or emphasize this again, it's not necessarily about access at its core. This really is a I'm sorry, excuse me, I've said that wrong. This is not about compliance at its core. It really is about access. I mentioned that at the outset from my own personal story, but I think that just collectively, we have a responsibility to make sure that everyone in our community has access to documents so that they can be contributors to the process of education, so that they can get access to the supports that they need to be successful. And I doubt there's a person on this call who would necessarily object to that. For your district or your organization, that accessibility is only going to further build that trust within your organization, make conversations easier to have, and get you focused on sort of the right things instead of the wrong things. You know, when you're focused on, I can't get access to this, or who do I need to, in a sense, yell at to get access to this, you're losing time on what you could be doing, which is increasing the quality of learning and making sure people are getting the supports that they need to focus on something that, quite frankly, is not productive. Would you agree with that, Leo?
I totally agree. And then as we move into the conversation more, it takes a team as well. So sometimes it takes something that looks like compliance to really kind of form the team and get everybody rowing in the same direction. So, and I think everybody on this call probably has those key players in mind. My IT director is pivotal in this process. With her, insight to all the things that are happening. It's one thing for administration to say we got to go do this, but the action does happen on the ground, and making sure you're disseminating that process. I will throw a little plug out because I think she's in the audience here. Lauren Harwood is an excellent IT director and has been helping us facilitate this. So.
Hey, Lauren, good to see you. Okay, so we talked about this a little earlier. I just want to press into it one more time, why this matters for AI and systems. Leo, I know you're a big technology guy. We've been talking a lot offline about the impact of AI on education, how those processes are being brought in, not only to the classroom, right, where you see them, but also sort of in the back office of school districts and how school districts are using them to optimize different processes. And so that's a big point of emphasis that I don't think we talk about a lot. And I think as you're planning for this, you don't just need to think about, are the documents accessible to my people? You need to think about, are the documents accessible to my systems? And so let's just, if we could, Leo, spend a little bit more time on that one. I wrote like AI depends on structured, readable content. You mentioned that, but also what happens when you don't have accessible documents?
Yeah, people talk about the ghosts in the system, right? For sure. And as you know, Corey, I've got another project I'm working on around this very thing for school districts, right? Around using core documents around AI called School Amplified. A little plug, sorry, but the core piece of it is having that good data in, and because if you don't, that's where those ghosts come from. And people talk about it, and there's actually a pretty funny. I think there's a pretty funny Super Bowl commercial about digging at OpenAI,
Right.
right? But the reality is, whether it's OpenAI, Claude, or any of those others, off the shelf, that you're using or a service you're trying to use of any kind, you need those core documents. The work still has to happen to make sure that your messaging is correct, right? And the intention of your documents are correct. And that may sound like a lot out of the gate, but it only takes a couple of pieces of information that are wrong or inaccurate to train the system or tell the system and interpret it incorrectly back to a user, right? And so I think that's a big part of the preparation process, that this tool that you turned us on to is going to be helpful for in the future, right? It's totally going to just prepare us for that. And the accessibility part of it is that important, because the same machine learning that happens by those tools is what gets used to read that document, right? So if that document isn't formatted correctly or read correctly. It's like you said earlier, I'm just going to I'll skip over that,
Right.
and it's not going to tell you, right?
Right.
It's going to say, well, sometimes they will tell you,
Something's
but
missing here. I can't remember, but it's I've uploaded 10, 15 documents, but something's
right.
missing here.
Well, it
Yeah.
reminded me of that commercial from the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember it. Because, you know, am I beautiful? Right? Of course you are. Right? Right. It's going to be very positive, right? And
Yeah.
and it's going to tell you the best it can because it wants to show you it's doing the best it can because that's the tool's intention.
Yeah.
Um, so the reality is having a tool that helps you find those inaccuracies and correct those or corrects them for you. So,
I'm just fascinating debate. I think that again, infrastructure, not compliance, right? Compliance is just a loaded word, and nobody loves the word compliance. And I don't think we need to think of it as that necessarily. Certainly, what we're going to show you gets you to that level of WCAG 2.1 compliance that you'll need. But it really is about that infrastructure and that system. And again, we think this is a great opportunity to look into those systems and start to build that infrastructure responsibly. Okay, so risks of waiting. Why do this stuff now? We talked a little bit about the AI need. Again, those backlogs are growing daily. As they grow, this only becomes a more expensive, and potentially cumbersome problem for your team. Lawsuits and OCR complaints are rising. We know this. I had this on a different webinar slide, but the number of OCR complaints being issued to districts has gone up exponentially. If any of you are on the communications side in particular, you know that this deadline shift doesn't necessarily stop those complaints from happening. I think in the legal world, some people would actually argue that it makes those complaints easier to argue for the plaintiff because there is not a set standard in place, and those things are left until that standard is in place, are left open to interpretation by the individual judge or the individual hearing that case. So keep that in mind. Again, I think this is not something that is new. We know about this. We are simply looking for ways to reduce risk and improve efficiency across our systems. PDFs are
Corey,
awesome. Yeah.
I'll put something on here too because I actually consulted for a district for a year that was in the middle of this. Um, you get and so many of us on this call may know that one or two community members that are going to be stickler to find any reason to call out your district, right? And they will find anything possible. And what happens is once you get on their radar and you have to go through this audit, the audit process is terribly annoying. And there's always legal threat, and you probably have to get legal services to help you navigate it. But at the end of the day, you're going to just have to go through this work, right? And so, and one of the things, if that does happen, is to show that you're engaged in it, and it doesn't really go anywhere, right? So you have, proof that you've engaged in the process, you're in process of updating the site or updating the stuff, and it makes that risk of dealing with that much, much lower.
Yeah, that
So,
good faith effort, right? It's kind of like
yeah.
if I let something go for a day, that's probably fine. If I let something go for 3 weeks, 3 months, or I didn't let it go, but I'm just trying to get it done, and people are realizing how long it's taking, that time is creating the friction, and that friction is leading to the action. And I think when you can show that good faith effort and you can do it quickly, people are less likely to advance those causes because they know you're making that attempt and they've seen the results of that attempt.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so why does manual remediation fail at scale? We're talking about how we scale this, not necessarily how we do it. I think we talked a little bit about this. Number one is it's just expensive. I mean, some of the numbers, and these probably don't cover everything, Leo, but at bare minimum, you're talking $5 a page. And how many pages do you have in a single document? At the high level, when you've got to do that super deep remediation around images and different things that are challenging, you're talking sometimes in the range of $25 a page. And those numbers have been pretty consistent from what we've seen over the past couple of years with manual remediation in particular. Again, what we're going to show you can bring those costs down significantly. That volume, again, how many pages are in a document? Sometimes it's hundreds, right? That volume is often underestimated. It doesn't really solve for those ongoing workflows and those challenges. And then, of course, your staff time is limited. I asked someone the other day, we were talking about this. She said, well, I could probably get one of these done at the basic level in 5 minutes. I said, one page? Yeah, one page. Well, how many pages do you have to do? Multiply those pages times 5 minutes. So suddenly it was something crazy like 50 hours. And then I was like, what if I could take that and tell you we could do one of those pages not in 5 minutes, but in 30 seconds? Oh, interesting. Look at all the time I've saved. So doing that calculus is a worthwhile exercise. Okay, so we want to build a system here, not a sprint. We've got some time. What we'd suggest the districts do, like scan your environment, see where those high impact documents are, and start there first. Automate where possible, or automate first, and I'll talk about that in a second. Why do we do that? Because when we automate first with that human in the loop, it's going to save us an incredible amount of time that we can use to focus on the things where we really need the human remediation to go deeper. And so that focus is really important. Again, I wrote add human review where needed to my point, and then just monitor continuously, right? Find a way to constantly garden your website and your environment so that you are always making sure that you have a tool available to you to, when it's needed, remediate documents, and that you have a system for how you can do that and how your team can access it, which is another thing we're going to show you. Accessibility of the tool itself is pretty straightforward. So, Leo, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about this because you've seen it. But the tool that we've been working with is from our friends at ArtScan and AOD called Accessibility on Demand. You can kind of see a picture here. I'm not going to give the group here a live demo, but you can certainly get one, and I'll show you how to do that. But imagine you had a queue, right? You could open this up on your screen. You can see that big picture in the back there where you could upload documents in batches, large batches, and you could click a button, have those files remediated within your system or within your portal, and then you get a report back that you can see that on the left-hand side that tells you the level of WCAG 2.1 2A compliance that it matches or that it rises to. That's typically somewhere in the range of 95 to 97% for most documents. If you need documents to go deeper or to get a higher level of compliance, you can simply add tokens to go to that level 2, or you can choose level 3 to get some actual human remediation help as well. So all of that is available to you within the portal. You get the portal, you get the reports, and of course, it gives you your documents back, which you can click into right in the portal, see what changes have been made, and where necessary or where you want, you can even make revisions right there in live time. So we think it's a pretty cool tool. We've seen a lot of attempts at this, and we had never before this one seen one that worked this well, which is why we decided to share it with the community. Leo, what are your thoughts?
Well, and now I'm wearing my finance hat over my technical hat. I really like this because of a few reasons. One is out of the gate, the technology is solid, and it focuses on this particular issue for sure. It's a really quick way for us to get our web page documents updated. But one of the other key factors from my finance hat is it's not a subscription that I'm not worried about us using or not using, right? You buy the number of rides on your trolley pass or your T pass, right? For those who live in the Boston area, you get your T pass and you can spend your rides, and that's what I like about this, right? So it's you use as much, and if you need more, you purchase more, and I think that's a great factor. It may be a little much up front, where if we have to do a lot of documents, we have to go and test those, but then you find an even keel and you buy some each year, or if you didn't use as much one year and you buy them the next, because from the school finance side, predictability is paramount for us. So being able to predict how much. And so So I do like that piece for sure. My team tells me that the parts about compliance and the ease of use are dead on with the product. And I like the demo, but I personally have not stuck a document in there myself yet. But I did through some tests at the demo myself when they were looking at it. So I think those two pieces together, make it a very good fit for us. Especially as we're kicking off this process. So, and as everybody else knows, this will evolve as our needs evolve. And so, I just see a good product, vision, with the product. And so, we were pleased from that perspective as well.
Yeah, we've been happy. We've seen the team be pretty open to taking suggestions as well, and looking to make modifications where things could work better based on feedback. So that's been great to see. And again, it's something we look for in partners that we sign up with. So what does this look like in practice, right? I think that like it gives you an opportunity to do a couple of things. You're going to want to scan those documents first to see where those gaps are. And you're going to want to look across your system to sort of see where you want to start. So this can help you do that and kind of get you a sense for what you're probably going to need, or give you a sense for the prescription, if you will, for your community. You're going to want to start to fix those documents quickly, right? Automate that tagging, the reading order, the alt text, those edge cases. I think like if you've done this work before manually, it's intense, and there's a ton of stuff that like if you don't haven't been through this process, you don't think about that needs to happen with those documents, but it happens fairly quickly, almost in the matter of seconds or minutes with accessibility on demand, and we've been pretty impressed with what it's given us back. And again, those compliance reports are huge, right? Because to the point of that good faith effort, you now have a document that goes along with it that you can share. And people can say, this is good for me, or no, I need more. And at which point they say, I need more, you can go back and you can work on that with them. But it becomes a process and a conversation, less of pointing fingers and, waiting and waiting and hoping that someone doesn't file a complaint against the district, which could result in a judgment that would probably be far exceed the cost of the tokens that you used on the problem. Okay, so human in the loop. I mentioned this. Again, you want to automate first, right? And choose human remediation as needed, because that's going to save you time and cost. Up until this point, we really only had the option of using that human remediation. And so everything felt cost prohibitive. And you kind of just took a wait and see approach, because what else were you going to do? Well, you don't have to take that line anymore. I think with a solution like this, you really do have an opportunity to provide accessibility at scale, which take all the legal stuff out of it for a second. That's a pretty cool thing. And we're excited to kind of help districts figure that out. Okay, so what does this look like now? We're going from those prices I showed you in terms of per page with this system. I mean, you can see you can get things done, and a large portion of your things are going to get done for about 30%. I'm sorry, 30 cents a page, right? And all the way up to $8 a page if you want that real deep remediation. But that's a far cry from the $5 to $25 a page that you were looking at previously. So a tremendous amount of savings allows you to look at the problem at scale and start to build systems around it, right? So you can really start to think about this en masse across your district, and where those gaps might be. Flexible pricing by document type, meaning you can go to level 1, level 2, or level 3, depending on what you need for the different documents. And as Leo mentioned, right, pay only for what you need. To me, this is the big thing. I know that I used to report on EdTech coming out of college, and I was telling Leo this before. I thought I had seen everything under the sun, and at the time, it was all about hardware implementation, and then we moved to SaaS implementation. And people are really lamenting SaaS right now because we've got all these apps that are sitting on the shelf costing districts tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars a year. But I think we're finally starting to move away from that. Leo, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the software as a service, some of you may know I have a history in there as well. And I think that we're being much more judgmental about what we're buying subscriptions to, right? It's kind of like that service now on your phone where it goes and audits your email and everything and tells you, oh, I have two Netflix subscriptions, or I have two this, or I didn't even know I subscribed to Discovery Channel,
Right,
right?
rocket money. Yeah.
Yeah, Rocket Money, right? Is that what it is? Right.
Yeah.
So I love it, right? And that's what school districts are doing on a very consistent basis, but really having to evaluate that. So having that page to go piece, I think is a great model, because before you know it, then you cancel it because you're not using it, and then you need it again, right? Um, so I think that model in this case is a perfect use case for that. So, and I want to just thank everybody. Corey, unfortunately, they're about to call my group, so my connection. So, I really, really appreciate this conversation. It's been wonderful, and I can't say enough about working with the team from ArchScan um, and yourselves for introducing us to it. So really do appreciate that. And I can't say enough about that. So I was happy to come and talk about this, even with the moving of the deadline. It opened my eyes to just how much needs to be done. And so please don't go look at our website yet. We're still looking to update it. So we're in the process right now. So, but I do, I'm open to any questions as well, after the fact. I'm sure my email is in there somewhere. And I'm open to answer any questions as well. And I do recommend everyone take a look at this as a solution, because I think the risk is low and the payout is high for sure.
Thank you for saying that, Leo, and thanks for stopping up in Salt Lake City to chat with us
Yeah,
and share your experience with it. We will send questions your way, so thanks for volunteering.
thank you very much.
All right, for those of you that want to stick around, again, just a couple more things to cover, and I'm going to give everybody access to 100 free credits that they can use to try this with your own documents, and then we'll even walk you through once you do that with our friend Jesse, who some of you might know, to kind of take a look at what those documents did and what the system had to say about them. So the district perspective, again, Leo already mentioned, right? Understand the volume that you have, right? Align ownership within your organization, build that awareness. This is the time to build that awareness and build that system. We've got a little more runway. The deadline has changed, but the requirements have not. And then we can avoid that sort of reactive cleanup where we're just responding like a deer in headlights to problems. So was happy to hear Leo talk about a lot of that and how they're doing it in Dighton-Rehoboth. I hope that the folks on this call will see this as an opportunity to think about this through their lens, right? And what you need in order to build a true infrastructure and a system for accessibility and particularly accessible documents in your district. Start where the risk is the highest. Please remember enrollment in sped docs. Like those things are always going to get people into hot water fastest. Those board minutes and policies, those things that are front facing and need to be out there in front of folks, you're going to want to look at those. And I do think that those early wins are going to help you build that momentum and trust with your community that is going to lower the temperature, allow you to have more productive conversations about solutions and accessibility and less about compliance and litigation. So that's going to be really important for everybody as you think through this process over the next several months and you start to dip a toe in and look at what works for you. Simple starting point. Again, I mentioned, let's give you a diagnostic. We have one that you can take to kind of see where you're at. Jesse can share that with you. I'll probably drop a link to the diagnostic in the email that you receive after this webinar. It takes about 3 minutes. Get a sense for where you're at and then apply for those 100 free credits. I'm going to drop a QR code up on the screen here, and you'll also have a link to it in the email after the webinar. And then sign up for that brief demo with Jesse, more of a conversation. He'll go through the results on your documents and kind of get a sense for what your district needs to do as it really starts to ramp up its planning and its system to handle these challenges. Okay, so we're going to move from the backlog to a system. We have the time to do that. We're going to reduce that long-term cost of remediating documents. Again, I think this is going to help us just support staff and students like me and others who need things a little bit differently, more effectively. And we're really going to start to build something sustainable, meaning like start now, start to see how this works, create the system, create the infrastructure. So when you get a year out, that system is in place. It is humming, and you are simply servicing the needs of your teachers, your staff, your students, and other community members at scale. And there's less risk, there's less sort of the CYA sort of culture. It's just a matter of this is how we do business in our district. It is all about accessibility, so much so that we have a system that we know works, and we're proud to offer it to our community. Okay, so for those of you that are on the call still, you can claim your 100 free credits right here. Simply hold your phone up to the screen and download that QR code, and we'll get you set up. I'm going to send out the recording after today, and you can also get to this stuff that way if you'd like. So don't feel like you need to do this now. Jesse, who I'm not sure if he's on the call or not, you can schedule a meeting with him. Some of you know Jesse already. He simply will walk you through the results on your documents, kind of get a sense for what you're looking at, and help you start to scope this problem. There's no, we're not out here really selling this thing necessarily. We're simply trying to help districts understand the scope of the problem and then start to think about a solution and a system. And so for us, it really is about working with you to understand the scope and to help you kind of find a prescription that will suit the needs of your community. So I'm going to stop here. I just want to say thank you again to everybody for listening. I know Leo had to leave early, but I hope you found his advice and his insights useful as you think through this process. Certainly, he's been on the front end of this, really guiding us in our thinking, and we love the work that they're doing in Dighton-Rehoboth. I want to thank our friends at NESDEC for helping us promote this and get the word out. And I want to thank our friends at ArtScan and AOD for giving us access to this solution and allowing everybody to take advantage of those 100 free credits. So everybody enjoy the rest of your day. If you have questions, you can always get to me or to somebody on our team at info@rocketpd.com. I hope you'll consider to think about this process and take the time that you have, not necessarily to wait, but start to build that infrastructure and that system, because a year is going to go by pretty quickly. And I think that this is a great opportunity for us to reset the deck, to think about what accessibility really means in our districts and why we do it, and to build a system and an infrastructure that allows us to kind of lead with purpose and to stand up to that label that we are an accessible district, and we're going to go out of our way to make sure that everybody and anybody that needs access to information has it. So thank you again. Thank you for being a part of the Rocket PD community. We're going to do some more of these, so keep an eye out on your email or wherever you're getting this information, and we hope to talk to you again real soon. Take care.